Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Healthy Moving Podcast, the show that empowers you to exercise less, but move more so you will feel better. I am your healthy moving enthusiast, Jen Hoffman from healthymoving.com. Happy New Year, friends. I know that 2016 was a really difficult year for a lot of reasons, and that you might be very ready for the fresh start this change in the calendar presents. As you looked around at all the heartache that occurred around us in 2016, you might be wondering, how are you to respond in this new year? That's what today's episode is all about. I've got a plan for you for making the most of this fresh start so that you can make a big impact on our world. I'm also really excited that in the second half of the show, Rebecca is going to join me for our Community Insight segment, and she's going to share with you a very creative way that she's been weaving more movement into her day. I know her story is going to inspire you. Friends, this last year has been an absolute heartbreaker. The Aleppo horrors and the tragedy of millions of refugees, multiple terrorist attacks across the globe, our deeply polarized country, the sudden death of many beloved icons at young ages. And I know from talking to members of our own Healthy Moving community that many of you are experiencing personal pain, family struggles, job loss, medical issues, and other really hard situations. If we are to rise to the challenges that all of these heartaches present, to be problem solvers and change makers, we have to talk about a crisis that isn't hitting the headlines or your news feed. It's the epidemic of stress and burnout. It's harming our physical health. The American Academy of Physicians found that 2/3 of all doctor's office visits are for stress-related conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and high blood pressure. And the CDC called one component of burnout, sleep deprivation, a public health problem, saying that persons experiencing sleep insufficiency are also more likely to suffer from chronic diseases such as hypertension, diabetes, depression, and obesity, as well as from cancer, increased mortality, and reduced quality of life and productivity. But stress is a silent killer of something else that we rarely talk about. It's a killer of our creativity, our problem-solving skills, our optimism, and our joy. All the things we need to rise to the challenges that are facing our world. Friends, if you do nothing else in 2017, please take steps to lower your stress level. We often glorify stress by calling it things like hustle or wearing busy as a badge of honor. Listen, I'm all for hard work, drive, and ambition, but they need to be accompanied by some boundaries. Boundaries that protect us from burnout. I'm committed to working on this myself this year and to bring you resources to help you reduce your stress this year as well. To get us started, I've got a free video for you with my favorite 3-minute exercise for reducing stress. You can get it at healthymoving.com/stress relief. And I'll also put a link for it in the show notes for episode 53 over at healthymovingpodcast.com. Listen, you're never going to eliminate stress. It's part of life, but you need some effective coping strategies. If you're running on fumes, let's talk about 4 boundaries that you can commit to right now to better cope with life's stress. Number 1, sleep. Are you getting enough rest at night? Guys, this is a huge one for me. Since nighttime is one of the only times my house is quiet, 3 kids, remember? It's so easy for me to get busy with a project, lose track of time, and work into the wee hours of the night. I have recently committed to getting at least 7 hours, preferably 8, of sleep each night, and I can't tell you how much better I feel. If you struggle with falling asleep or staying asleep, stay tuned. I'm working on a sleep episode, and I will have that out very soon. Boundary number 2, productivity. You know the saying, work smarter, not harder? I'm going to dig into this one in next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll share a productivity hack that I've been using lately that has dramatically reduced my stress level. But I'll give you a little hint now just to get you started and tide you over to next week. Reduce the amount of time you're spending multitasking. Instead, focus on doing one thing at a time and watch your productivity skyrocket and your stress level decrease. Number 3, our third boundary is realistic expectations. How good are you at acknowledging your limits? If you continually overestimate what's humanly possible for you to do, you're going to live in a constant state of stress. I know it feels scary to think about saying no to something that you feel you should do. But when you overcommit, you add stress to your life. Stress that makes it difficult for you to do anything well. Our fourth and last boundary is radical self-care. You don't need hours every week for focused self-care. I know that's kind of the impression that comes up in your mind when you hear me talk about self-care, but the belief that you need all that time is hurting you and contributing to your stress. You have to practice radical self-care in small moments of time. For some tips on this, go back and listen to episode 35. There's lots of inspiration for you there. Friends, this is your year to make a difference, to spread the love, joy, and hope that our world needs, to solve problems, both big and small, to make progress and gain momentum, to do the work that only you can do, to make your unique and necessary contribution to our world. The first step in that journey is reducing your stress. I'm here to help you, and I'll continue to do so all year long. Don't forget, head to healthymoving.com/stress relief for a simple exercise you can do to start lowering your stress level right now. It will only take you a few minutes, and you'll be surprised by how calming it is. And don't worry, it's not a deep breathing exercise. I know you've probably tried those before and they don't always help. I believe this exercise will. It may even bring you joy. Okay, I'll be back in just a moment with this week's Community Insight segment. I am always trying to give people ways to incorporate movement into their day, and I often suggest that you can set an alarm on your phone, or you can link movement to a particular thing that occurs throughout the day, like going to the bathroom or going to get a glass of water or talking on the phone. But one of the members of our Coaching and Challenge program wrote me an email recently to tell me about a creative way that she's kind of weaving more movement into her day. And she agreed to come on the show and tell all of you about it. Rebecca, I'm so grateful that you are willing to join me today.
Hi, Jen. Thanks for having me on.
So can you tell us a little bit about where you're kind of weaving the movement into your day now? I really loved what you had to say.
I started doing it in the transitions between the tasks that I do all day. I started thinking about this with my kids, and that, we give our kids transitions between their activities to give them a heads up, and so that they leave the park easier, or we can drop them off at Sunday school or at lessons. And working through some of the needs of my children with that, I realized that I wasn't giving myself any transitions anywhere in my day, that I just kind of jumped from thing to thing to thing. And even coming home from running errands, I would come in the house and wash my hands and start cooking, and everybody else is taking a break and I wasn't. So thinking about this, I started, instead of checking Facebook or something in those small moments, I was doing a movement instead, and moving forward with that, trying to complete the task that I was doing, and then doing a movement and then doing the next task. So really giving myself space and time to pause and check in with myself. And it's made a big difference. Yeah.
So incredibly powerful. When I first read your email, the first thing I thought of was, I don't know if you watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when you were growing up, but It was a staple in our house. And I always think about, when he would come in, I think the premise of the show was that he was at work somewhere else, and then he would come home kind of at the end of his day. And I don't know if you remember, but he would change his jacket. He would put on the sweater and change his shoes. And he had kind of this transition really between the busyness of what he had been doing before and now his time at home. And when I read your email, I just thought how powerful it is for us to be more intentional about that. What have you found? I know you haven't been doing it for an incredibly long amount of time, but what have you found as far as what the benefits of it? How is it helping you to be more intentional about those transitions and to do some kind of movement and some kind of body check-in during that time?
It has kind of touched all of the areas of my life, but it's made me more attuned to myself and my body, and given me more of an appreciation for myself and how hard my body works, and wanting to take care of myself a little more. I can tell on the days that I don't pause, that I just go, that the day all blends together, and that feels sad to me at the end, that I looking at myself kind of outside of my body and how hard I worked, and I didn't give myself any pause in the day to think, or just do I need to drink a water, or am I thirsty, or my neck hurts, or whatever. And instead of feeling the guilt and the shame that we often feel for not doing exercises and not kind of getting that check mark in our day of self-care and those shoulds that we should do, it was a different feeling. I wanted to take better care of myself. And
I think that's such a positive, one of the things I talk about a lot is having kind of a positive reinforcement cycle with our body. So often it is, we do operate out of that guilt and shame, and we are kind of beating ourselves up, And one of the things I always try to say to people is, I'm not a huge advocate of working out, but I love the expression work out because you love your body, not because you hate it, or take care of your body because you love it, not because you hate it. And the fundamental thing that I think you're discovering is that when you start to check in with your body, you see it and appreciate it more, and then you love it more, and then that love cultivates an ability to take care of it out of wanting to nurture the thing that supports you and does so much for you. But I think it's a powerful part of body image and self-care and all of that kind of stuff. It's just, you've really tapped into something that I think is so powerful and really so easy to do for so many of us, just saying, okay, so what are the big transition points in your day where you're shifting from kind of one thing to the next? And maybe you don't start with doing it with all of your transitions, especially if you're a parent at home with young kids, then you probably have a lot of transitions during your day. But can you just pick one of them, before you cook a meal or after you come in from being outside, or pick one transition and just allow yourself just a brief moment. I always try to tell people, it's easy to think 2 minutes is nothing, 2 minutes goes by so fast. But if you stop and just pay attention to your body for 2 minutes, you start to discover how powerful 2 minutes can be. So I think pretty much everybody can find 1 2-minute pocket in their transitions during the day. And I really love this. I also like to ask people what one of their favorite healthy moving exercises is. So I'd love to hear from you, Rebecca, about which one is one of your favorites.
Well, every night at the end of the day, I look forward to doing the psoas release with the shoulders bolstered.
Oh, yeah.
I lay down on the floor and I read a book, or I watch TV with my husband. And I've started doing it in the middle of the day too, in some of the longer pauses of my transition, that maybe I need to lay down on the floor instead of just do a calf stretch here. So
Well,
I like that one a lot.
I can't remember if I've shared before, but there have been times when my kids have been known to set up a prop set up for me to lay down on the floor. My daughter will say, Mom, you need to lay down and shavasana yourself. She calls it a verb. Relax yourself. Which every time she does it, I'm like, okay, Mommy must have given the signals that I needed to take care of myself. But I feel like instead of beating myself up for the fact that she can read those, I feel like I'm going to take that as a positive sign that I'm showing her that even grown-ups need to take care of themselves and work on emotional regulation just like kids do.
Right.
So that's so powerful. I want to just give everybody a quick description for how to do this one, but this is one where a visual is really helpful. So I will put one in the show notes for this episode over at healthymovingpodcast.com. You can find an actual video for this exercise, but basically you put a bolster of some kind, and I traditionally use a yoga bolster, but a lot of people don't have those around their house. So if you have a couch cushion or a rolled up sleeping bag, what are you using for your prop, Rebecca? Do you have a bolster?
I have 2 couch cushions that kind
perfect.
of stair stack.
Exactly. So something that you can kind of prop up that's a little bit high. I would say for the average person, probably between 4 to 6 inches is a minimum height. Some people like to be bolstered even much higher than that. But you're placing your head and the top of your shoulders on the bolster so that your rib cage can hang off. And when people are first starting this one, I usually suggest having the knees bent and the soles of the feet on the ground with the heels under the knees so that the shins are vertical. You can progress to a couple different leg positions that will be shown in the video that's linked in the show notes. But you're just allowing, it's not anything that you have to do. It's a very passive stretch. I love, Rebecca, that you said that you're watching TV or you're reading a book or something while you do it, because it's perfect for those times. Because you just kind of have to get down on the props and then just hang out there. How long do you typically stay in it, Rebecca?
Yeah, long time.
Yeah, you can stay in it.
I move my legs around into different positions, but I can hang out there for an hour.
Yeah, you can definitely, I try to read in this position at the end of every day, and exactly like you, I move my legs around to different positions, but it's oftentimes, depending on how tired I am when I start reading, at least 30 minutes, but even just 5 minutes in this position would be great for someone who's starting. So the psoas muscle that this is releasing gets extremely tight when we've spent a lot of time sitting. So if you work a job where you have to sit for a lot of the time, or if you've been in the car for a little bit of time, it's really great for that. It's just really a wonderful release for a lot of the tension that builds up from a whole bunch of time spent sitting. So that is a great one, Rebecca. Thank you so much for mentioning that and for coming on and sharing your story. As I said, I know this is a really simple thing that anyone can do, and it can have a really big positive impact. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Jen.
All right, friends, that's all for today. I think our world needs a stress relief revolution. Will you help me start one by sharing this episode? Imagine a world where we're all better able to cope with our stress and to come up with creative solutions to the problems, both big and small, that are facing our world today. Thank you so much for helping me to spread the word. I would also greatly appreciate it if you'd head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review the show. I greatly appreciate your feedback, and it also really helps others find the podcast. You can head to healthymoving.com/iTunes to get the easy steps on how to do that. Thank you for doing that and for listening. Until next time, friends, keep moving.